Lina had always loved exploring abandoned places, but nothing prepared her for the old mansion at the edge of Blackwell Forest. Locals warned her never to enter, claiming the house contained a room that reflects what doesn't belong to this world. She thought it was just another legend, until the night she stepped inside. The mansion was silent, untouched for decades. Dust hung in the air like frozen fog, and the smell of damp would filled every hallway. Lina moved carefully, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as she documented everything for her urban exploration channel. But something felt wrong. Every sound echoed too clearly, as if the house itself was listening. At the end of the second floor, she found it. A door slightly open, and a cold breeze drifting out of it. The room inside was empty except for one thing: a massive mirror covering the entire wall, cracked in a spiderweb pattern yet reflecting perfectly. It felt impossibly heavy, ancient, and strangely warm to the touch. As Lina stepped closer, her reflection flickered, just for a second. She froze. She leaned in, breathing slowly. Her reflection stared back, until its eyes blinked a second too late. Her pulse spiked. She stepped back, but her reflection didn't. It stayed where it was, smiling, slowly, unnaturally, as if discovering a new expression it had never tried before. Then the reflection raised its hand. Lina did not, and with its fingertip, the reflection traced 3 words slowly across the inside of the mirror, glowing faintly on the glass. "I see you." That was the moment Lina realized the villagers weren't lying. Something lived inside the mirror room, and it had finally noticed her. Lina forced herself to look away from the mirror, her breath shaking as she backed toward the door. But the wooden frame slammed shut on its own, sealing her inside the room. Her heart jolted. She grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. It felt locked from the inside, as if the mirror itself controlled the door. Behind her, the glass began to hum. A faint vibration crawled through the floorboards, up her legs, settling in her chest like a second heartbeat. The cracked lines in the mirror glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that didn't match reality. She turned slowly, and the reflection was gone. Her own body still existed. She could feel her breath, her fingers trembling, but the mirror showed only the empty room behind her. No Lina, no shadow, only the widening smile of an unseen presence blooming across the reflective surface like a stain. A soft tapping sound echoed from behind the glass. Knuckles? Claws? She couldn't tell. Each tap grew louder, more violent, forming a pattern. Tap, 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 tap. A message. A call. Then a figure emerged inside the mirror, stepping forward from a depth that shouldn't exist. It wore Lina's shape, but not her expression. Its posture was twisted, its smile too wide, and its eyes too dark, deep pits instead of pupils. It reached its hand to the surface. The glass bent. It didn't crack. It stretched as if the mirror were made of liquid skin. Lina realized one horrifying truth. The reflection wasn't trapped inside. She was. The figure on the other side whispered, voice perfectly matching hers. "Switch with me." And the surface rippled, inviting her in. Lina stumbled backward, knocking over a wooden stool in her panic. The sound snapped the mirror creature's head toward her in a sharp, unnatural motion, like a bird fixating on prey. Its smile vanished, replaced by a look of ravenous hunger. The mirror began absorbing the light in the room. The air grew colder, heavy, thick enough to burn her lungs. Lina fumbled for her camera, raising it with shaking hands. Maybe if she documented it, if she recorded proof, then someone would believe what happened to her. If she survived. But when she aimed the camera at the mirror, the screen showed something she wasn't expecting. Herself standing still in the reflection. Except she wasn't holding the camera. And she wasn't alone. A tall, shadowed figure stood behind her mirrored self, one hand resting gently on the reflection's shoulder. His fingers were too long, jointed wrong, curling like blackened roots. The creature leaned toward her reflection's ear, whispering something silently. Lina couldn't hear it, but she felt it, like cold breath on her own neck. The reflection lifted its head and mouthed. "He's choosing." The mirror creature from earlier slammed both palms against the inside of the glass, cracking it further but not breaking through. The tall figure behind Lina's reflection nodded slowly, approvingly, like a puppeteer satisfied with his marionette. Lina's real body weakened, her knees shaking. She felt her thoughts blur, her memories dim, as if something was taking her, pulling her identity apart thread by thread. She dropped the camera. The sound echoed unnaturally long, repeating in a loop. Something whispered from the mirror's depths. "Only one of you gets to leave." Lina forced herself toward the window, desperate for air, light, anything. But when she tore the curtains open, her breath froze. The outside world was gone. Instead of the forest, the night sky, or the distant town lights, the window showed endless corridors of mirrors stretching into infinity. Each mirror reflected another angle of the room, except they were wrong. In one, she saw herself standing still, eyes black. In another, she saw herself bleeding. In a third, something tall dragged her body across the floor. Every mirror showed a different fate. She stumbled back, clutching her head as voices filled the room. Overlapping versions of her own voice screaming, begging, whispering secrets she never told anyone. The mirror behind her warped again, its surface bulging outward like a balloon ready to burst. Hands, too many hands, pressed against the glass from the inside. Lina screamed and ran to the door, pounding, clawing, kicking. The wood groaned but refused to open. The voices grew louder, merging into a single unified whisper. "Replace, replace, replace." The mirror creature stepped forward again, closer now, its features sharpening into something almost human, almost her. Its eyes locked with hers, and Lina felt her reflection pushing into her thoughts, copying her memories, her face, her very soul. Then the tall, shadowed figure appeared behind the creature, placing its hand on its head like a blessing. The room trembled. The creature opened its mouth, and Lina heard her own voice come out of it. "You don't belong here anymore." The glass stretched once more, and this time, the creature's foot emerged through the surface. The moment the creature's foot touched the wooden floor, the entire room shook violently. The temperature plummeted, frost crawling along the mirror frame like veins. Lina backed into a corner, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The creature fully emerged now, a perfect, distorted version of her. Its limbs were slightly too long, its smile too wide, its skin too pale as if drained of life. But the worst part carried her posture, her movements, her voice. It was becoming her. The tall shadow remained inside the mirror, watching like a proud parent. Its glowing eyes tracked Lina, analyzing her fear. The creature stepped closer, mimicking her trembling breaths, mocking her. "Lina," it whispered, "I've waited so long to be real." With each step it took, Lina felt herself fading, as if the creature's existence was consuming hers. Her heartbeat slowed, her muscles weakened, her vision blurred. It wasn't just copying her, it was replacing her. She crawled toward the fallen camera, clutching it like a lifeline. The creature knelt in front of her, tilting its head with curiosity. "You recorded enough," it said in her voice. "Let me finish your story." It reached toward her face, fingers stretching as if to peel her identity off her skin. Lina screamed, grabbed a broken piece of the wooden stool beside her, and swung. The shard sliced across the creature's cheek, and instead of blood, a thick black liquid dripped, sizzling as it hit the floor. The creature recoiled, shrieking, a sound of metal tearing. The tall shadow inside the mirror leaned forward, displeased. The glass rippled violently. Lina realized she had seconds left before the mirror pulled her in forever. The shard of stool cut through something that wasn't blood, something black and viscous that hissed when it touched the floor. The creature recoiled, its laugh a metallic rasp that made the room shiver. Lina didn't hesitate. She scrambled backward, dragging the broken wood with her like a makeshift weapon, and shoved it into the creature's chest where her blow had opened that dark seam. The thing shrieked, a sound that was at once her voice and not her voice, and it stumbled, unsteady. But the mirror didn't care for wounds the way living things did. The crack on the glass widened, and from the spiderweb fissures another fingertip emerged, then an elbow, then the suggestion of a shoulder. The surface behaved like water, stretching, rippling, seeking more surface to cross. Lina felt the pull at her bones, a tug at her memories. Flashes of childhood, the scent of her mother's kitchen, a name she'd seldom said aloud. Each vanished into the cool sheen of the mirror as if being siphoned away. Her camera lay between them, its red recording light blinking steadily. Instinct made her lurch for it, not to film but to use it. She angled the lens toward the glass and hit record. The creature paused as if it noticed the tiny red dot. For a heartbeat, its eyes narrowed with curiosity. Then, in a movement both graceful and grotesque, it mimicked her, lifting its head to stare into the camera lens exactly as she watched it. Lina spoke aloud, almost pleadingly. "You can't have me, But a cold voice, layered over her words, said through the creature, "We were waiting. You belong." The mirror's surface pulsed, and Lina realized that every second it observed, it learned a fraction more of her. She had to buy time. The recorded light continued blinking, and for now, the creature recoiled, uncertain. Lina crawled, dragging herself toward the doorway as the creature pressed forward in jerking, puppet-like spasms. Its face, her face, tilted in angles that made her stomach flip. She grabbed the camera with both hands and held it like a talisman. Its lens pointed at the creature as if a device could hold the thing at bay. The tiny microphone picked up a wet rasp as the creature spoke, echoing back in tinny playback that made her skin crawl. Something else moved behind the glass. The tall shadow, always just beyond the reflective field, shimmered, elongating its limbs toward the surface. It placed both hands on the mirror from the inside and began to push outward. The mirror bowed under its pressure, and for the first time Lina saw movement not as two-dimensional but as depth folding into the room. Faces swam behind the surface. Past victims, maybe. Eyes pleading, mouths forming words that melted like frost. Desperation edged into her thoughts. She remembered an old superstition her grandmother once muttered. Light and contrast could confuse a spirit used to smooth reflections. Lina toggled the camera's flash. The bulb flared white, bright enough to sear her vision. In that instant of blinding light, the creature recoiled, its hands slapping the glass in pain. The tall shadow staggered, its outline trembling. Using the flash's heartbeat as cover, Lina lunged, shoulder first, into the threshold. She ripped her palm along the edge of the mirror frame, feeling a burn that wasn't purely physical, like cold fire. The mirror's surface quivered, and for a breath, the creature's smile faltered. The crack spread like a wound as Lina yanked at the frame. Behind the glass, the tall figure slammed its palms against the inside, pounding, as if to force its hand through. The mirror's edges screamed in a sound that was half glass, half wind. Lina's fingers bled where splinters caught her, and the pain cut through the terror with a jagged, grounding clarity. Then the mirror bled back. Thin black threads, like the viscous ooze from earlier, seeped through the widening fissure and splattered across the floorboards. They hissed where they landed, smoking for a heartbeat, then congealed into shapes. Hands, faces, mouths opening in silent accusation. The tall shadow's voice rolled under them, a distant drumbeat that made the floor vibrate. "Return what is owed." Lina grabbed the camera strap and wrapped it around her wrist. The device felt heavier now, like a tether to something outside the mirror's hunger. She spoke into it, not for an audience but to anchor herself. She said her full name, the way her mother used to call her, the names that belonged to her life. She listed birthdays, places, the color of her first bicycle. As she spoke, a strange warmth returned to her memory. Small, safe details that resisted slipping away. The creature reared, furious at the retrieval of those tokens. The tall figure reached into the mirror and tried to snatch the parts of her that remained bright, the stolen memories. Lina tightened her grip, and the camera's red light blinked faster. Her voice steadied. For every detail she reclaimed aloud, the mirror's hold weakened a fraction. It was slow. It was terrifying. but it was work she could do. Hours must have passed, or minutes, but time felt elastic. Lina recited everything she could. The camera's recording swallowed her voice and held it as evidence. Names, songs, a secret nickname whispered only once by an old friend. The red light blinked like a heartbeat, and with every blink the glass flinched. The mirror's surface convulsed, and for a moment the tall figure retreated, unwilling to relinquish its prize. Then a new motion. The creature reached past where its body should end and touched Lina's cheek with an impossibly cold fingertip. She flinched as the memory of her father's laugh, one she had just spoken aloud, flickered and went dark. Panic surged, but she clung to the sound of her own name echoing on the camera. The recorded voice became a lifeline. A sound came from the floor above, the front door opening as if by a gust. Sunlight, weak and trembling, sliced through the window slats. The tall shadow hissed, annoyed, and the creature's hands grasped at the glass where the light cut across it. For the first time, Lina understood. Light didn't only confuse it. Sunlight burned its edges. The house had adapted to long nights of feeding, but daylight was a vulnerability. She sprinted toward the window, dragging the camera with her. The bulb had a few more flashes left. She angled the camera toward the mirror and fired the flash repeatedly. Strobe after strobe, each burst making the creature recoil, each burst stealing back a sliver of her. The tall figure screamed, a sound like furniture smashing, and the mirror convulsed violently. The surface bulged outward once, twice, then snapped back, sealing in the shadows like a wound sutured shut. When the final flash died, Lina collapsed against the floor, exhausted and trembling. The mirror lay cracked, its surface dull but intact. The tall shadow had receded, its eyes burning dimly behind the glass. She was alive but costly. Dawn crawled across the mansion like a cautious animal. Lina pushed herself to her knees and fumbled for the camera, hands slick with sweat and something darker. The recording light still blinked. She rewound in the tiny screen until she found the moment. The creature pressing its face to the glass, the tall shadow's hands pushing, her own voice steady as she spoke names. She watched herself fight and listened to the evidence of what nearly took her. Someone was coming, footsteps on the front walk, voices calling a name that made her chest lurch. Rescue? Curiosity? She couldn't be sure. Lina hauled herself to the doorway as the mansion groaned like a waking beast. The front hall felt different in daylight, less monstrous, more ashamed to show its face. She stepped outside into the pale morning air, blinking against the sudden openness. The world smelled of wet soil and freedom. A neighbor, an elderly man who kept hens, stood on the path, shouting and waving, a small radio clutched under his arm. He stared at her, then at the house, speechless. Lina staggered toward him, camera dangling, and collapsed into his arms. He asked questions. She managed to say a few disjointed words. Mirror, names, light. He wrapped his coat around her and led her away. Later, safe on the porch of the neighbor's cottage, Lina played back the footage. On the screen, for a single blink, the creature's eyes didn't look back at her. They flicked sideways toward the camera, and in the reflection of the lens, a tiny pinpoint of movement. A fingernail, pale and curved, sliding along the glass edge of the mirror. The camera's audio picked up a whisper below the wind. "We'll wait." She realized then the truth she had fought to postpone. The house had not been destroyed. It had only been delayed. And somewhere in the mansion, behind the cracked glass, something patient still watched. Lina reached the second floor, where the house finally began to reveal its true nature. The lights dimmed with every step she took, as if the walls were breathing slowly, watching her closely. The long scratches she had seen earlier were now deeper, fresh, almost bleeding. She stood in front of a closed room, and from inside came a low sound. Not a whisper, but something dragging across the floor, slow and heavy. The door trembled. The wooden boards beneath her vibrated like a living heartbeat. Lina stepped back, but the floor creaked loudly. The dragging suddenly stopped, like it had just noticed her presence. Before she could react, the door creaked open on its own. A wave of icy air rushed out, chilling her skin instantly. Inside the room, there was no furniture, just an old metal bed positioned in the center. Under the bed, a dark, smoke-like stain spread outward, pulsing slightly. Against her better judgment, Lina knelt to look beneath it, and two glowing red eyes stared back at her, unblinking. She screamed and stumbled backward, but something unseen blocked her path, making her fall. The eyes stayed fixed on her, studying her every movement like a predator waiting to strike. Lina crawled away, but behind her came slow, heavy footsteps. Someone large, someone trying to stay quiet but failing. She spun around quickly, finding no one there, but a long shadow began to grow across the wall. A shadow with no source. It moved upward, lifting its head, opening a wide, unnatural mouth. It stretched over her until she felt cold breaths on the back of her neck. Panic flooded her body. Her legs refused to move, and then she heard it. A voice. "You shouldn't have come back, Lina?" Broken, distant, yet so close she felt it vibrate through her chest. She froze. That voice. It was her sister Maya's. Not similar, identical, but Maya had died 5 years ago. The shadow grew denser, taking the shape of a human figure. The familiar scent of Maya's old perfume filled the air, wrapping around Lina like a memory she wished she could forget. Tears streamed down her cheeks, a mix of terror and longing. The figure lifted its face, and for a second, Lina hoped. But the face she saw wasn't her sister's. It was twisted, half-burned, and the other half smiling with an inhuman grin. The house began to shake violently as the figure approached. Doors slammed open and shut. Windows rattled as if the house itself refused to let Lina leave. She tried crawling toward the staircase, but a cold, skeletal hand wrapped around her ankle with crushing strength. She screamed as she was dragged back across the floor. The hand solidified into burnt flesh, long blackened fingers digging into her skin. The creature leaned close to her ear and whispered, "The secrets of this house are not for the living, and you left the door open for something else to enter." The house tightened around Lina as if the walls themselves were closing in. She clawed at the wooden floor, leaving deep marks as she fought against the force dragging her backward. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the violent rattling of the windows. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Silence fell like a thick blanket over the entire floor. The hand around her ankle vanished instantly, leaving only a burning coldness behind. Lina pushed herself up, trembling, and looked around. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretched unnaturally, like the house was rearranging itself to trap her. She heard footsteps echoing from the far end. Slow, heavy, purposeful. Something was coming toward her, and she sensed no intention other than to claim her. Her breath hitched as the lights flickered wildly, illuminating the silhouette of a figure much larger than the one she had seen earlier. It scraped its claws along the wall, carving symbols she didn't recognize but felt deep in her bones. Every instinct in her begged her to run, but her legs refused to obey. The creature stepped fully into the flickering light, revealing its towering, distorted body. Its skin looked like melted wax mixed with ash, constantly shifting and dripping onto the floor. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, opening from ear to ear, filled with jagged teeth that seemed carved from bone. Lina tried to scream, but only a faint breath escaped her. The creature raised one long, skeletal finger and pointed directly at her, then at the floor beneath her feet. Slowly, the wooden boards began to split apart, revealing darkness, pure, bottomless darkness. Whispering voices rose from the void below, voices calling her name in tones both pleading and furious. Lina crawled back, but the darkness followed her, spreading across the floor like a living shadow. The creature lowered itself, its face inches from hers. Its breath was cold enough to sting her eyes. "You opened the house," it growled. "So now the house opens for you." The floorboards beneath her gave a violent shudder as something unseen tried to pull her down. With a desperate surge of strength, Lina forced herself to stand and stumbled toward the stairs. The house roared around her, walls bending inward and doors slamming one after another. The creature's footsteps shook the floorboards like thunder as it chased her. She reached the top of the staircase, but the steps twisted, turning into a steep drop as if the house was trying to throw her back into the darkness. Lina grabbed the railing, her knuckles turning white, and leaped forward. She fell hard onto the lower floor, pain shooting through her legs, but she didn't stop. She crawled toward the front door, which now pulsed like a beating heart, swelling and shrinking as if alive. Behind her, the creature shrieked, a sound so sharp it felt like glass cutting through her mind. The floor began to ripple, rising and falling like waves. Lina forced herself to her feet, limping toward the door with everything she had left. Just as Lina reached out to grab the pulsating door handle, the creature appeared behind her in a violent burst of shadow. It seized her by the shoulder, its grip burning like fire. Lina shrieked and twisted her body, slamming her elbow into its face. The creature recoiled, its skin cracking like dry clay. Using the moment, Lina threw herself at the door with all her strength. The heartbeat beneath it grew faster, louder, as if the house itself panicked. The door resisted, swelling outward like it didn't want her to leave. "Let me go!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. She dug her nails into the wood and pulled. The creature lunged forward again, its claws brushing her back. At the last second, the door burst open with a deafening crack, releasing a blast of cold air that hurled her outside onto the ground. Lina tumbled across the front yard, dirt and dead leaves clinging to her skin. Behind her, the house groaned, a deep, monstrous sound as the front door slammed shut on its own. The windows flickered with dim, sickly light, almost like dozens of eyes watching her escape. Lina pushed herself up and stumbled toward the road without looking back. Her body shook violently, but she kept moving, terrified the house might reach out and pull her back in. As she reached the street, a final whisper carried on the wind. "You can't leave what you opened." She froze, her blood running cold. The house stood completely still behind her, silent, waiting. Lina realized with dread that whatever she had awakened inside House 27 wasn't finished with her. Not yet.